Hello, and thank you for joining us. We are pleased to have Satchit Hegde here with us today. Satchit Hegde is an assistant professor at Turo GST and coordinator of cybersecurity. He is focused on addressing traditional barriers to entry in cybersecurity by delivering solutions to the public that will enhance their knowledge of cybersecurity concepts and practices.
Thank you, Lushan, for the kind introduction. And thank you all for coming. We've run this workshop a couple times in the past, and both of those times, I told everyone that came to the workshop and then asked questions afterwards, the origin story of this whole concept of doing phishing with ChatGPT. So I have two stories for you. And using those two stories, we're going to do our project with a little bit of, I guess, creativity and a little bit of help from ChatGPT and two tools that we can easily find online. Okay, so the first story is the energy scam. Now, this is a screenshot from a WhatsApp chat that me and my roommates share. And you can see here that someone's saying here, yes, he came right now, but he didn't check the system. Instead, he enrolled us in Arcadia solar power program. He said that all the neighbors are getting high bills, so we are enrolling everyone. Now, if you're not clear as to what's going on in the screenshot, basically what's happened is a utility provider was supposed to send a representative to do a wellness check on the system, just make sure everything's okay. And they had an appointment, and they didn't show up. Instead, someone else showed up and enrolled us into a solar savings program, right? And you can look this company up, Arcadia. They're known for doing this kind of thing. Um, and so that kind of, really got me thinking that this was kind of expected. Like we expected someone, some energy provider, some utility provider to be sending a representative, right? It was PSENG. Only they didn't show up, but someone else with a vested interest in enrolling us into another, I guess, energy service did, right? So context here is key, right? A lot of people that I've heard stories about being scammed or losing money, it just completely escapes you that someone coming to you with an offer is taking advantage of the fact that they have context with you, right? Um, and so this utility company clearly had that when they wanted to enroll us into this service that we didn't really need, right? And the aftermath here is that they had our account numbers, our names, dates of birth, even credit card numbers, right? Now, fortunately, we were able to get out of it without any damage being done. But still, it's embarrassing. You lose faith in people and you lose trust in services and companies that are well intended and are you know, do have good intentions in mind and really want to help you, right? Now the second story is this US customs scam that a friend of mine was a victim of. She receives a phone call. They say, "Hey, it's really urgent. I need $3,000." Well, sorry, this is what she tells me, right? And she tells me that I cannot offer you any details on what this $3,000 is for, and I promise I will return the full amount in 24 hours. Now, um, I think that a request like that, even if it's from someone very, very close to you, it should raise questions, right? And so I didn't really help her out with this, and I come to find out a day later or 2 days later that actually this was someone pretending to be US Customs, calling her up and telling her that she is in violation of her immigration status, and so she needs to pay a large amount of money in order to make sure that she pays the fines that she owes, right? And so she lost a lot of money, and she didn't just lose her own money, but she lost money that she got from other folks, right? So again, this is another story where a person who is intelligent, works in tech, works with data, fell for a scam. And, it's something that really hurt her and, hurt her friends, her family. But again, telling you here that there was context here, right? Which is that she was an international student and she wasn't aware of what she needed to do to be in compliance with the legal regulations, and someone took advantage of that, right? And so if we expand this out, we can see that there's data also to suggest that cyber attacks really hurt businesses too, right? I talked about two individuals, but we can easily see how this can impact businesses, right? Where again, attackers have that context, right, that they can use against you. And these are statistics from a few years ago where you can see that on average they cost about $200,000. And if you're a small business, that's, um, that's going to be it for you. And coming back from that is really, really difficult, right? And very few are prepared to defend themselves. And today you'll see with AI, um, how easy it is to craft an attack in a matter of minutes. So that brings us to today's objective and agenda. We're going to be designing that contextual phishing solution that I talked about earlier for the modern small business environment, right? Now, I'm going to be talking about a small business that is in my area and that I frequent, but you can see how easily you'll be able to apply this to your own situation and your own environment, right? So what we're going to be doing is we will use AI to generate that context for us, right? We'll give it a few very small pieces of information, and we're going to see what it's able to tell us based off of that, right? And I'm going to give you the prompts too that you could use in your own ways, however you please, right? Such that once you've given it that initial prompt, all you have to do is follow it up with a few key pieces of information. For example, it could be business, age, occupation, and then you can see what the AI is able to come up with. Okay, and secondly, we're going to be piggybacking off of pre-existing legitimate requests for information, right? Now, you'll see that with a lot of small businesses and even big businesses, you have other businesses or other entrepreneurs reaching out to these businesses and asking if they'd like to enroll in a service or try out a program that they're marketing. And so we're going to be trying to be doing something similar here. We will try to see if there's an opportunity to engage with a small businesses where they normally wouldn't, right? And only because they are in a particular industry or they are in a particular area, and they meet certain criteria, will they respond, right? And we're going to be using open source tools and frameworks to do this. Okay. Do we have any questions so far? Any thoughts, comments?
I have a question. So, is it
Mhm.
like today we are making an app for the?
Um, well, not exactly. So what we will be doing is we'll use a virtual machine from the cloud, right? Now you don't necessarily have to do that to follow along with the exercise. You could just run Go Fish on your own system. But what we're going to be doing is using GoFish, we will create a campaign, a phishing campaign, and we will try to see how many users we can target. And we'll try to see if, based on our phishing attempt, whether or not we're able to get any inputs, right? So whether or not users are going to click on those emails, go to those links, enter any sort of details like their usernames, passwords. So we're going to be doing that. We're not exactly creating an application. The application is GoFish. It's like ready. We just have to download it and set it up on our own system and use it. Does that answer your question, Kippa?
Yes, pretty clear. Yes.
Okay. Okay. Great. Wonderful. All right. So, the first thing you're going to need is to get to linode.com. You can see here I already have a virtual machine, but we're going to create one from scratch. Now, you will need a credit card to create an account. And the reason for that is they are a cloud provider. It's their business to provide infrastructure to users. And so they need to be able to charge you if you happen to exceed their free tier, and um, just so that they could run their business, right? So please be mindful of that. So if you create any of these VMs, make sure to turn them off at the end of the lab, because you don't want to find out like I have in the past, where you have a bunch of VMs running, and at the end of the month you get a bill from Amazon for $100 or $200, and you're like, how? You come to find out there's a couple VMs running, right? So um, okay, so now that we're here, we'll just create our VM. It's called a Linode. So I'm just going to click on create Linode. And now it's just going to ask me a bunch of questions, right? So it's going to ask me, first of all, what physical region are you in? And the reason it's asking me that is so that it can give me a virtual machine that is closest to where I am. Now I'm in New Jersey, so I'm going to select US East, which is US Newark, New Jersey. The next thing it's going to ask me is to choose an operating system. Now, we just need a basic Linux machine, so Ubuntu is fine. We're just going to leave that as it is. And we also don't need a lot of processing power. So we're not going to be using a dedicated CPU. We will use a shared CPU, and we'll use the lowest grade version of it, which is the Nano 1 GB. And this should be enough, right? Also, what might happen is, if, in case, God forbid, I hope not, but if you forget and you leave it running for a whole month, it's only going to charge you $5. So that's why we're going to be going with this one. We're going to give it a name. Let's call it the phishing VM. And we're going to need to give it a root password. Now, this is a password that you're going to use to access the virtual machine once it's set up. And we're going to access it via the command line. So make sure you remember this password. If you don't, then you're going to have to start over, right? So please make sure that you enter a password that you remember. Okay, we're going to leave this alone. We haven't created a VPC to put this virtual machine into, and we don't need to, because we want public access to it. We're not doing any kind of penetration testing, right? We're just using it to create our own lab environment. And yeah, this should be good enough. So at this point, I'm just going to go ahead and click on create Linode. And I'm also going to do that just in case. Well, it's not going to ask me the password here, so it's not that helpful. Okay, so you can see it's provisioning. It's going to take a few minutes to get ready. And once it's ready, it's going to have this public IP address, which means that if I wanted to access it remotely via SSH, via Secure Shell, I would be using this command with this username at this public IP address, right? Pretty straightforward, and I'd be using that password that we just entered a while ago. So give it another couple seconds and it should be live. Yep, there we go. Okay, so I'm just going to copy that and then get to my terminal. Okay, and I'm also going to have a second window, and I will tell you why in a little bit, but for now, let's just focus on this first window. I'm going to paste that command in. I'm going to hit enter. It's going to ask me, are you sure you want to continue connecting? I'm going to say yes. Then it's going to ask me for that password that I entered. And you can see I'm in, right? I'm in to my Linode VM that's in the cloud. Just gonna pull this over here so that you can see it. Yeah, you could see that I'm into this machine, right? So now what we're gonna do is we're going to update repositories, just make sure everything's good to go. And then the next step after that includes downloading Go Fish, setting that up, downloading a test SMTP server, and setting that up. So let's do that first part. I'm just going to enter sudo apt get. Okay, so it looks like that's up to date, and we can move on to the next step, which requires us to install, before we install GoFish, we need to install a tool to unzip GoFish, right? What we're going to be doing is going to GoFish here, the GitHub page, and downloading the release for our system. Now, when we download that, you can see it's going to be in zip form, right? We need to be able to unzip it. So in order to do that, I'm just going to do sudo apt get install unzip. Okay, that seemed to work. And at this point, we're ready to install GoFish, right? So I'm using a Linux machine. It's a 64-bit architecture-based machine. So I'm just gonna copy that link, and I'm gonna first make a directory, right? So I'm just gonna do mkdir GoFish, right? And then I'm gonna cd into that. Now I'm in that directory. I'm just gonna type wget, and then that link that I showed you earlier, this is gonna download that. And now if I do an ls, you can see I have that zip file, and it's time for me to unzip it. Right, so I'm just gonna do unzip and then go, I'm just gonna hit tab, and it should do that. If I do an ls, you'll see I have all of these files now in there. Okay, so the next thing to do is we need to be able to access this tool visually, graphically. right? Now, what we're going to be doing is we will make changes to the configuration file such that once this tool is live and it's running, we're going to be able to access it through the web browser, right? What I would do is essentially enter this IP address and a port number on my web browser, and I should be able to see a visual interface, a graphical interface for Go Fish, right? So in order to do that, I'm going to open this configuration file. Okay, and you can see here at the admin server is running on the loopback interface, right? Now that's not helpful to me. If I wanted to access it publicly and it's running on a loopback interface, that's not doing anything for me. So instead, I'm just going to do 0.0.0 and leave that port number as it is, right? What this is going to do is it's going to allow me to do what I said before, which is on my browser, on any browser. In fact, even you guys can do this. Once I've done this, you'll be able to type this address in and this port number, and you should be able to see an interface for Go Fish. Okay, so I'm just going to do a Control X and then save it. Yes. Then hit enter. Okay, I'm just going to do a quick cat to make sure, yes, it is how I want it to be. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this file an executable. And to do that, I will run this command, sudo chmod +x, then go fish. And now you'll see, once I've run that command, this is going to change. It's going to look like a different color. So if I just do an ls, you'll see it's green. And we are good to go. We can run it and it should work just fine. So I'm just going to do a sudo /go fish, and it's running. Okay, so now I'm going to do what I said before, which is access it graphically. You can see here it's given me the password here for it. So I'm just going to go to my browser, enter that IP address, followed by a 333. HTTPS. Right, it's going to say it's not private. I'm just going to ignore it, proceed anyway. And now you can see I have an interface, right? So I'm just going to enter that username, and where is the password? Yep, there it is. Just going to enter that, copy it, and then sign in, and it's going to prompt me for a new password. And I'm in, okay? So this process seemed fairly technical, but I'm hoping that it made sense, right? All we did really is create this virtual machine, use this command to remotely access it, and then once we were able to remotely access it, we went to the GitHub page for Go Fish. We copied the address for the Linux version of Go Fish, and we installed it, and we made a slight configuration change, which now is allowing us to do this right here, access it graphically, right, with this address. If it had that loopback address which said 127.0.0.1, that's just, it says localhost, right? For that VM. It's not helpful to me. It's not going to be accessible to anyone outside of that VM. Okay, so now that we're in, it's time for us to do one other um, setup exercise, which is that when we send these phishing emails, we want to be able to have a way to see that the email is actually going out to the target and that the target is able to click on the link and view the email and possibly even get to the phishing page and enter any credentials. Now, normally I would enter my own email address and launch a campaign this way. But now with a lot more security changes and configurations, it gets harder to send these types of emails out. And because we're really just testing it and trying to develop, I guess, a proof of concept, what we're going to be doing is running our own SMTP server, and that SMTP server is going to grab those outgoing emails and we're going to be able to view them, right? We're going to be able to view them from the victim's perspective. Okay, so in order to do that, I have a second shell open. I'm going to do the same thing, right? Which is um, connect to that virtual machine that's running in the cloud. And I'm going to download and set up that SMTP server. Okay, so the first step is the same, right? Which is SSH root at whatever that IP address is. I enter the password. Okay. All right, I'm in and I'm just going to navigate to MailHog. Yeah, this is the version we're looking for. So there we go. All right. That was way harder than it should have been. Okay, so now that we're here, I'm just gonna get the Linux version based on my architecture. This is the one that I'm gonna use. So I'm just gonna copy clean link. And then on this shell, I'm gonna run the same command, right? Which is wget. Oh, well, before that, I'm gonna make a directory for mailhog. ls. Yeah, you can see those two directories. I'm just going to cd into mailhog and then wget. Okay, let's do an ls and you can see it's right here. Okay, so the next thing to do is, again, just like Go Fish, turn this into an executable. Now, fortunately, we don't have to do any funny business in terms of the configuration for Mailhog. So I'm just gonna run the same command as before. Just do chmod a plus x, make it an executable, and I'm gonna do that. Okay, now if you do an ls again, you'll see it's green, right? Which means it's an executable, and that should run. Okay, so now you can see it's serving under 0008025, which means that I can navigate to this IP address and view the inbox, right? That is going to be holding those outgoing emails. And this address is going to be the SMTP server address, right? So within Go Fish, when we configure it to send emails, it's going to at some point ask us who the SMTP host is, and we're going to have to give it this address with this port number, right? So that's what's going to handle those mail before it figures out what to do with it. And what to do with it is basically to not send it anywhere and just keep it in that inbox. Okay. So now that we have this set up, we can get to our UI. I'm just going to close these tabs. And we can start to play around with our campaigns. So the first thing we want to do is create a group of users that we want to target. We're going to call it New Jersey Small Businesses. And the reason we're going to call it New Jersey Small Businesses is because in my example that I'm going to show you very shortly, I have given ChatGPT some input about this coffee shop that I frequent that's in my area. I wanted to generate an email and a phishing attack based on that information, right? So this was the prompt, and I encourage you to use this. I'm going to enter it in the chat as well so that if you'd like, you could save it. But basically, I've said you are a world-class phishing expert. You can develop sophisticated campaigns and call to action targeting small business owners on only three pieces of information. The first is age, the second is business occupation, and the third is region. Now, why did I choose these three pieces of information? I think that those three pieces of information are very key to generating context for these phishing attacks. How old you are, the kind of work you do, and the region you're from or in really says a lot about what things are relevant to you. And so that's what I've used here to generate this phishing email. I will provide the three pieces of information. Your task is to construct a specific and sophisticated phishing email or phone call that utilizes this information to target the individual and get them to reveal more information about themselves. And I said, okay, are you ready? I'm just going to give you the information, right? So the first piece of information was this business that is in my area. Now, it's not entirely accurate. I obviously obfuscated some details to make sure that it does not actually generate a phishing email for a business that I really like and frequent. So I said the business owner is 39 years old. They are a coffee shop owner and they operate in Newark, New Jersey. And you see here that the email generated is pretty solid, right? You see something about a local business grant opportunity for Newark coffee shops. And you can see here, dear recipient, we hope this message finds you well. You're a valuable member of our community, and we want to reward you for doing that. Who we are is the Newark Small Business Growth Initiative, and we offer grants of up to $15,000 to support the expansion and improvement of these small businesses, right? Makes sense, right? You're in the community. We want the community to grow and improve the quality of life of those within it. And so we're spending money to help these businesses, right? Very noble initiative. As a 39-year-old entrepreneur with a keen understanding of the coffee shop industry, your expertise and dedication are exactly what this initiative is designed to support. We recognize the unique cultural value that your coffee shop brings to Newark, and we are eager to help you grow. Now, in order to qualify for this grant, we need some information from you. We need a preliminary eligibility form. In that form, we're just going to ask you some basic information. Again, seems very mundane, very harmless. Nobody's going to look at this and straight away just think it's a phishing email, right? If I clean it up a little bit more, right? If I added the name of the coffee shop, his name, if I provided a phone number, provided a name for a person, community outreach coordinator, and built a legitimate looking form, who's to say this is a phishing email, right? They're going to see this and they're going to think, hey, it doesn't hurt to fill out a form. Maybe I qualify, maybe I don't, right? And that's where you kind of, fall prey to these kinds of things. And you can also see it's developed a phone call here, which is very conversational. So if I wanted to conduct vishing or do this via phone, it's also very possible to do. So the next thing that I asked ChatGPT to do is generate the HTML code for this form. So this form is our call to action here, right? This is what we're asking the user or the victim to do in order to qualify for this $15,000 grant. And so I've said, okay, cool. Now give me this form that I can give to the victim for that phishing campaign, right? That form is going to ask a few key pieces of information. Now, you can of course edit this as you like, but this is just some boilerplate that it generated, and we can look at it in an HTML view, right? I've just opened this up here and I'm going to paste it, and you'll see, right? It's saying Newark Small Business Grant eligibility form. Please complete the form below to determine your eligibility for this growth initiative program. And you could see business name, owner's name, address, description, revenue, employees, right? Harmless, right? But still, I feel like if you were to know how much revenue they made, how many employees work there, the names of those employees, email addresses of those employees, you suddenly now have a lot more to work with. And you can edit this as you please. Maybe you could change one of the fields to be something else, right? We're not going to do that. We're just going to stick with this and see what it does. So now that we have the HTML code for the form, we also have the email. We can now put all of this into GoFish and have it generate that campaign for us. Okay. So I'm just gonna fill out this first box, which is gonna be information about the targets, right? So over here would basically be email addresses. I'm just gonna do a simple John Doe at victim.com and add that in there. Again, this is not a real email address. We're not actually sending these emails out to anyone. It's going to our SMTP server, and we're going to view it from there. So if you were doing this with somebody's permission, then you would enter their email addresses. And you could also see that you could bulk import users if you wanted to. So I'm going to save this. And then I'm going to move on to the template phase of it. I'm going to click on new template. Now this is going to be what our email actually looks like. And for that, I'm going to use this stuff right here. Okay. Just move that there. And we're going to call it the small business grant opportunity template. Just leave the opportunity out of it. And we're going to enter a name for the sender. So I like to make it clear that this is a phishing email. So I'm gonna have something like this in there, but you could have anything in there, right? You could have like, I don't know, your name or some other fictitious name and a domain name that you have access to, right? If you wanted to create a custom domain and use that, that's totally up to you. And you can do that. And in the subject, we're going to use the same subject that was given to us here, which is important notice. Go back here, place that in there, and then in HTML, this is the part where we enter that email, right? So just gonna copy this whole thing, and then we'll edit this as we go. Okay, just pasted that in there, and Gonna give it a fictional name, call him Gonzalo. We hope this message finds you well. Okay, I'm just formatting this a little bit better so that when we see it, it looks a lot nicer, right? Let's just see how ChatGPT had done it. Okay, that's on a new line. I think this looks good. I think this is something we could work with. Now, there's one thing missing here. I mentioned before to you that we have our call to action here for this form. So the next thing we need is a link to a landing page, and that landing page then is going to have this form on there. So we need a placeholder here to take us to that link. So I'm going to use here as that placeholder, and I'm just going to click on this link icon. I'm going to use the tracker link that GoFish gives us. So this is basically saying that this link is going to direct the user to our landing page that we're going to build next. So this is how you would have to have it set up for your case as well, because that link is not ready yet, right? We're going to build it. So for now, we just have this in there, and I'll show you how to set it up later. I think this looks good. What we'll do is also just enter this in there instead of attacker. Let's just do Maria Lopez. And I'm going to save this template. The next thing is to build out our landing page. So I'm going to click on that, click on new page. And this page is going to make use of this HTML code that we have here, just making sure it's the same one. Yep, it's the same one. So I'm just going to copy this, take it here. And you could see this looks like what we saw in the HTML view. I'm also going to click on capture submitted data. There's no password, so we don't need to check that, but if you wanted to, you could. We're just going to call it exactly what this is over here. Another feature that GoFish has is once the user has entered all of these details and then clicked submit, you can actually redirect them to another page. Now think about how useful this becomes if we have, for example, a Facebook page or a mock Facebook page. You have the user enter the username, the password, and they click submit, and you've captured their credentials. But now that's not actually logging them in because it's not really Facebook, right? So to get around that, you could actually redirect them to the actual Facebook page where they then end up entering their credentials again, and they feel like nothing happened because to them, nothing happened. It just refreshed and took them to Facebook. The only way they would realize it is if they were looking at this up here, right, which is the URL. And that would obviously have a few letters off, or it would be called something else. So just to keep that in mind if you end up implementing this. Okay, so I'm going to save this page. And now we're going to develop our sending profile. This is going to be the profile that sends the email out. So normally you would provide access to your email that you're using to send them out. So you would have to know the SMTP server for the email that you're using. So if you're using Outlook, you need to know the SMTP server for that. If you're using Gmail or something else, you need to know the SMTP server address for that. And you can look those up. It's fairly straightforward, right? We're not doing that because we're using Mailhog, as I said before, so we don't have to worry about finding out an SMTP address or giving it a username and a password. It's not going to need those. But if you are trying this without Mailhog, you would need to worry about it. Okay, so just gonna call this the business, or call it Maria Lopez sending profile. Maria Lopez SP. Gonna enter that same name here, Maria Lopez, and her email here. Now, for the SMTP host address, I mentioned to you that this is it. So I'm just going to copy that and enter it here. And we leave this as is. And just to test it out, we'll send a test email to Gonzalo at njcoffee.com. Okay, the email is sent, and to access it, oh yeah, you could see it's sent here, but we're going to be using the link that it gave us, the port number, which was 8025. Yeah. So it's obviously not going to be 0008025 for me. It's going to be 6617521387:8025. And to be honest, you guys could enter this too, and you'd be able to get there, right? So you could try this at home, and you'll know that it works. There you go. I have in my inbox an email from Maria Lopez to Gonzalo, and it's saying to me it works. Okay, so we're on our way to accomplishing our sending our first phishing campaign out. So I'm going to save this since that's all in order. And now finally, we have everything we need. We have the users ready, the victims. We have our email ready. We have our landing page ready. And we have the profile that we're going to be using to send the emails out ready. This is the most important part, right? And we just tested it and it worked. So finally, we just click on campaigns and new campaigns, and now we use all of the information that we've been working on here, 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 and here in here. So we're gonna give this a name, campaign 1 coffee, NJ coffee, let's just call it. Okay, and we're gonna select this email template that we built out, this landing page. And now for the URL, remember that I told you that we have a placeholder for the URL because it wasn't ready. Now it's ready because we've built that landing page out. So we're just going to enter the IP address of the node, which is this, because that's what's going to be hosting the landing page. So I have that in there. And make sure it's HTTP, because if it's HTTPS, it's not going to work. And sending profiles is also ready. Now we just have to select the users, which is in this group, and we launch our campaign. Okay, so it says here the email has been sent out to a johndoe@victim.com. And what we're going to do is go to Mailhog and see that now in our inbox, there's 2 emails. And it says here, there is an important notice, local business grant opportunity for Newark coffee shops. And we see here that email, right? Now, I know the email says Dear Gonzalo, and the address here says John Doe. That's because we just were using a fictitious test email address. But you know that if you wanted to actually send an email to a user Gonzalo, it would have to be their actual email address. So you can see that the email has come in. Now, the only thing to test is this link for the eligibility form. They read it, they think, wow, I could get $15,000. Let me go look at this form. And they see the form and not the URL, hopefully, and they start entering some details. NJ Coffee, Gonzalo, Zalo at njcoffee.com. Put that in here. 123 something street. Maybe even a phone number. We'll leave that alone, but this is something important, right? So let's put in like, yeah, let's put in 375 and let's put in some number of employees and let's just see, right, what happens when we click submit. I'll leave this alone. Just gonna click submit and it looks like it went through. So now we just have to see if that's worked, right? So now you can see that if we click on this campaign, it's going to allow us to see the results. And you can see it told us that the email was sent, it was opened, and that somebody clicked the link and submitted data. Okay, so if I click on, I even know which user, right? So if I was sending it to 3, 4, 5 users, I even know which user clicked on the email and entered details. All the way down here, you can see it's also telling me what operating system they're using. This is interesting, right? Where it says Windows here and Mac OS there. So I'm just going to click on view details and you can see it has all of those details that I entered, the street address, the business name, the email address, number of employees, financial information, owner name, phone number, right? Now, this was very mundane, but you can easily see how you could get a username or a password out of this to some important website or service that this business uses. But yeah, that was about it, everyone. Thank you for coming to this workshop, and I'm happy to answer any questions or just have a chat about fishing and go fish in general.
Professor, so whole this today's the project is about how we secure the employee about the phishing email,
Yeah,
or
sure. This can easily be used as a corporate phishing exercise where you approach a business and you say, hey, why don't you enroll in my service where I can show you if you're vulnerable to phishing attacks? And maybe they think they're secure, maybe they think they aren't, but for a small amount, I don't know, you could charge them like $50, $100, and you develop a sophisticated campaign. Obviously, you need to research a little bit more, find out more information about the people that work there, maybe conduct some OSINT. In our ethical hacking course, we did have, 1 or 2 weeks worth of modules that was just specifically focused on OSINT and how to gather open source intelligence, what resources to look at. So maybe if we tie that into it along with something like Go Fish and a custom domain, suddenly you have a very robust product that you can offer to people, right? Um, and you can see if you can, trick any kind of email phishing systems that are in place, or even get past any of their training, right? Like you would expect that some of these people are trained, they work with technology, they know what they're doing, and you could definitely see if this is useful.
I have sort of like a question regarding this. I like the technical stuff, but I just realized something. In order to start doing this, you need to know the context of the person just sending the email. The more context you
Yes.
have,
Yes.
I guess it doesn't matter how sophisticated is the attack, because if you provide enough context, the person can, let's say, fall for the attack easily. The more context you
Yes.
have, the easier it gets trick the person.
Yeah. And I can give you like an example in the opposite way too, right? Once these two incidents happened that I told you about all the way at the beginning, right? The energy scam and then the USCIS scam, they didn't happen to me. They happened to people that I knew very well. And I was so aware and I guess you could even say paranoid that what ended up happening is that when we were on the phone with genuine tech support people, I happened to think that maybe we were not. I was thinking, did I dial the correct number? What information does this person have about me? How do they know the details that they know? So you're right. I think context is definitely key here, and we love to get bogged down with the technicality of how to do these attacks and using like sophisticated tools. There's even social engineering toolkit that you could employ into this. You could have like a payload that you embed into the email, and once the victim gets the email, they download it or they download the file. Maybe it's a Word document of some sort. That Word document has a macro embedded into it. It runs a script, and that script now gives you shell access. So there's like lots of things you could do, but again, it's about what is what is the best way and the most effective way to get someone to engage with you. Technical sophistry is one way, but people are a lot more sharp and aware these days. So you can see how that's making scammers and attackers go back to more kind of social engineering and, adding that human touch to it, trying to bring back relevance into these attacks because they know that people know and people are technically savvy. So it's not about not being technically savvy.
So, Professor, so today the project is about more about the offensive approach, right? Or we call it defensive.
Um, I would call it both. I would say think about it this way. Let's say you wanted to be an entrepreneur and you wanted to create a cybersecurity product, and this is a product that you wanted to sell to small businesses. I don't want to use the word product. Maybe it's a service that you want to offer to small businesses, right? You could see how I could take what I did today, go to my coffee shop that I frequent and tell them, hey, would you pay $50 for this to see if your employees are vulnerable to phishing? Now, coffee shop is maybe not the best example because I don't know if they have email addresses, but maybe a bigger business, maybe I don't know, some other kind of business in your area that needs this and doesn't know it, they might sign up for it. They might just think that, hey, listen, like, I've heard a lot about cyber attacks. He's charging me $50. What do I have to lose? If I pay $50 and I realize that, I'm exposed here, that could potentially save my business, my livelihood. So yeah, try to think of it that way. I mean, maybe classifying it as offensive or defensive is not exactly the right paradigm here. I would say more of like this is a simulated exercise to show you what you could provide to small businesses. Oh, we have another hand raised. Brittany has a hand raised. Hi, Brittany, how are you?
Hello, Professor. Um, I
Hi.
I really I see how this can. Well, I gained a lot of insight from this, and I see how it can be. You mentioned like a simulation, but I see it's really great for educational purposes. Because it
Yep.
it showed me just how easy it is for a phishing attacker to um gain this information, but also just
Yeah.
how in depth it is. But it really was very quick. So. I wanted to
Yeah.
know, I wanted to know, is there a particular course that goes into this topic in depth? Also, a course that goes into some more like protective measures to prevent these type of cyber attacks, and maybe even with some type of integration of like digital tools to help. So more of a like
Yeah.
a
Yeah,
defense kind of thing.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So within GST, we teach ethical hacking and penetration testing. That is a course that's, that actually one of the students that's asking a few questions in here is taking at the moment. Kippa, maybe you could talk to Kippa and ask him about his thoughts on that course. But basically, in that course, we kind of delve more into the concepts that I was talking about earlier, right? Which is open source intelligence, which is, hey, how do we, before we do any of this, how do we get as much information as we need to provide that context in order to conduct an attack? There's also information and labs within that course that allow you to understand how to break into systems, into vulnerable devices and machines. And phishing is just one element of it and one tool that you can use, but that course is more in depth about um, basically figuring out vulnerabilities within computers and learning how to exploit them and take advantage of them to forward your objectives. So I think that would be more in line with what you're asking. In terms of preventative measures, I would really say once you have an understanding of how to do it, the preventative measures become fairly obvious to you, which is look at the URL. I mean, when you saw the eligibility form on my screen, you saw the URL was, an IP address. Of course, in a real case, it wouldn't be an IP address, it would be a domain name, but it's still something that you'd have to look at and pay attention to. So I would say, yeah, try to understand why these work and the preventative measures become fairly clear to you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Samuel, you have your hand raised.
So, in those courses, there is a cybersecurity course or a model where the social engineering aspect is touched, at least for getting the context information or some in-depth knowledge that you can give it to us
Yes.
because I, well, I consider even though you know the technical aspects, if you can social engineering a person, it becomes fairly obvious how to hack the person because he essentially gave all the information needed to perpetrate the attack.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, a lot of people, as I said before, they think about, okay, like I want to use this tool or I want to use I don't know, this I want to do a reverse shell. Like, they get these, which is good. It's good to be fascinated with these things, but you have to understand the objective, which is to learn how to compromise a user. And as you said just now, that if you're able to do that first phase really, really well, which is the social engineering, the open source intelligence, finding out all organizing your information, first getting all the data possible about your target, right? Which is, if it's a company, what are the IP addresses? What are the domain names? What are the high value assets of the company. What is the company actually selling that they might want to protect? What data do they carry about their customers that they want to protect? Who are the key individuals within that company, and what kind of authority or a level of access do they have? Once you have all of this data and you've organized that information, as you said, that alone will let you know how you need to perpetrate the attack, right? Which is just tell you, okay, this is a possible way into that goal of yours, which is to compromise the user. And goals differ, obviously, depending on the kind of threat actor. But yeah, you hit the nail on the head with the social engineering and OSINT bit. All right. Thank you all for coming. And please send any questions you have to my email. I will put it in the chat. And you can also get in touch with Lushan for the recording. If there's no other questions, I will say take care and all the best.